Bonjour, bonsoir, and top of the morning to you. This is the Insert Title Show, and I am your host, Wolf Strife. On this episode, I'm going to be doing a grand tour of the City of Lights, the Cité of Paris. In a month, I'm going to France with my sisters for the 75th anniversary of D-Day, and I figured I would use Assassin's Creed Unity to learn my way around the city and also to learn about the famous buildings and just the history of this magnificent city. So I'm going to begin my journey with Les Invalides. Les Invalides is a military hospital slash retirement home for French soldiers. It was commissioned by Louis XIV in 1670, and construction began the next year. It was designed by the architect Le Briand. I really like this idea. It was a really good thing Louis XIV did for his soldiers, and a very noble act, I think, giving them this place to be taken care of, to get medical treatment, and also if they didn't have a home to go back to, or if they were just too injured, they could actually live here. I mean, it really is a noble idea. The main complex of Les Invalides wasn't completed until 1676, but as it was being built little by little, soldiers were starting to move in and get treated and also start living there. Like by 1674, there were already soldiers living there. Les Invalides is a very large complex. Pretty soon there would be about 4,000 soldiers being treated and living here. So yeah, this is a big place. Yeah, and I think one of the most brilliant parts of Les Invalides is that the soldiers were treated like soldiers here. Like, they all had their uniforms. They were even divided up into military units, companies, and so on, so that they would always have that way of life and that feeling of camaraderie and brotherhood. I really think that's a brilliant idea. And if you look at, especially in America with our VA system and just what happens to our soldiers once they get out of the service, it really is not pretty. I think it's something like 20 veterans a day kill themselves in America. I mean, I think we could definitely use a program like they had in Les Invalides. And it's not like the guys were laying about being bums here either. They were given work, like they would make uniforms, shoes, just whatever they could do to be productive. And I think that is very, very important to men, to be given a job and a purpose. And without that, I think that's what leads to a lot of suicides nowadays. And of course, when you get out of the service, you are no longer part of a unit. You are just basically on your own again. And I think that causes a lot of problems too. So that was just really brilliant on their part, keeping them together in the units, giving them work, giving them a purpose. I mean, I really think this is something that we could definitely use nowadays. Now, if you look at Les Invalides in the game, it's actually quite a bit smaller than the real life Les Invalides. I guess they did this to, this game can't be life-size Paris. I mean, that would be a little crazy. So they just had to scale it down to kind of fit it into the city. But basically in the game, they just have the center part of the complex with the main court, which is called the Court of Honor. Now, in real life, there are actually 17 courts. 16 of them are smaller than the Court of Honor, but yeah, there's a lot of them. And they're basically named after famous victories like Austerlitz, and there's one named after Mars and Metz, and, just all that kind of stuff. Now, in the game, you can see the Court of Honor is connected to this thin little building here. That's actually the St. Louis Cathedral, which was kind of a late addition. Basically, after they finished the main complex in 1676, they realized, yeah, the soldiers are probably going to need a chapel, so Briand got to work designing that. And the design he came up with was pretty modest. I guess he was just thinking, this is going to be used by soldiers, nothing too fancy. But the construction of it was pretty slow, and eventually Louis XIV got tired of waiting for it to be done, so he actually had Briand fired and replaced by Hardouin-Mansart, who was a Baroque-styled architect, and needless to say, definitely spruced up the chapel and added a magnificent dome to St. Louis, Mainly because of court etiquette, the king was not allowed to attend mass with commoners, so Saint Louis had to be basically cut in half. One side would be for the soldiers, and then underneath the dome would be where the king would enter the chapel. And I think eventually they would go so far as to actually separate the two sides of the chapel by like a glass wall and stuff. Just, you know, kind of say, hey, this is where the king goes, and this is where all the common folk go. So, kind of interesting. Okay, let's see what the game has to say about the building. Oh, so they actually say there were 6,000 soldiers here. Okay, shit, I thought it was just 4. Dang. That's a lot of freaking guys. Then, of course, during the French Revolution, it was raided for weapons and stuff. Oh, still 100 men being treated here. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's a really great idea for a veterans hospital. Not to just take care of them, but to give them purpose and work and meaning. I just think that's a brilliant combination. Hello. Bonjour, mademoiselle. Alright, let's see. Get your ass out of the way. Yeah, there's a sculpture of Louis XIV up there. I'm gonna go check that out. There's a statue of Mars guarding the entrance. Mars, god of war. I think that's Minerva over there. Basically the Roman version of the goddess Athena, goddess of wisdom and war. So, pretty good pair there. Alright, let's get up here. So yeah, even though this is a much smaller version of Les Invalides, this is still a pretty big complex. Pretty cool sculpture here. Flagpole. I think there's one at each corner. Pretty decent view of Paris from over here. How's it going, guys? Guess those are windows, or I don't know, they kind of look like portholes. Alright, let's go say hello to Louis XIV. Hey, a cockade. Hello, Louis. Arguably the greatest king France ever had. Okay, there's the Court of Honor. Yeah, I just want to see what it says about cockades in the game. I guess those are like the little collectible things. I hate collectibles. I think they show it. Where the hell is it? Database. Items. Yeah, items. Yep, cockade. Pretty cool. I need to get one of those. Put it in my hat. Ah, Lafayette came up with the idea. Ah, and the white stands for the Bourbon. Huh. Okay, the Bourbon dynasty, or whatever the hell you want to call it. Huh. Yeah, because basically the 3 colors, red, white, and blue, stood for like the Revolutionary Republic of France, and just a plain white stood for the royal family, so that's interesting. So basically, if you were pro-Republic of France, you would wear the tricolor, but if you were a royalist, you would just wear the white. So, and depending on what part of France you were in, you could get into a lot of trouble. If you were in a royalist town, they would probably try to kill you if you were wearing the three-color, tricolor cockade, and vice versa. Alright, there's a guard. Alright, let's go check out the Court of Honor. Huh, not a whole lot going on here. It's pretty cool though. Yeah, this is basically where the soldiers would do parades to kind of, you know, keep that military unity and comradeship going. And just to, you know, make them feel like, hey, we're still in the army, you know. France needs us, we can still go out and kick some ass if needed. Get to work, you bum. Look at this guy. Hope they're not paying him much. So yeah, it's just a cool idea, having the soldiers do parades and stuff. Give them something to do. Now look at this guy. This guy's a hard worker right here. Oh, there's a statue. Wonder who that is. Nice shoes. I guess that's supposed to be Bouillant or Monsieur. Huh. Yeah, it's probably Bouillant. He designed this part of the complex. I think nowadays there's actually a statue of Napoleon here, basically overlooking the Court of Honor so that he could keep an eye on the soldiers doing parades and marches and stuff. It's pretty cool. It's actually a pretty cool statue of him. Yeah, let's try and get up top here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the soldiers who were living here had a pretty busy regimen. I mean, they had to go to church every single day in St. Louis. And there's a chapel. Yep, there's St. Louis. Oh, bonjour, madame. And, you know, they would work in the factories and stuff, making shoes and uniforms. So, you know, it's good to keep them busy, give them a purpose. You know, those are pretty freaking cool windows. Not sure what year this is. I think this is like 1794, 96. Kind of depending on what time period I am in the game. But I'm pretty sure this is like right before, excuse me. This is right before Napoleon started his ascent to power, so. I think this is probably after the Terror, but before Napoleon really got going. So kind of like right in there. Yeah, right in between. Yeah, there it is. St. Louis. Pork. Yeah, let's just run around, take a look, see if there's anything around here. Some cool bust of a chick. The column looks pretty old. Statue. Kind of looks like, what was that, the Farness of Hercules or something? Yeah, kind of weird. Ah, there's a bust of a dude on the other. Interesting. Alright, let's go check out Saint Louis, shall we? Pardon, pardon. Excusez-moi. What do you freaking know? I guess they're trying to rile up the crowd. Man, what else you got to do back then? Ain't no movies or video games. Okay. Oh, watch out, crazy lady. Alright, let's go inside, take a look. Oh, wow. Wow. Look at this. Well, I guess I should tell you about the dome. Well, basically, Mansart modeled his dome design after the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, naturally being a Baroque architect. And originally, he was even going to add a colonnade to Les Invalides, much like Bernini's colonnade at St. Peter's Basilica, but they never got around to building it, I guess because it would have been too expensive or just, no room to put it. But yeah, he was definitely going for a St. Peter's Basilica look, and there was definitely nothing wrong with that. I mean, this is just amazing. And I believe his dome was made in layers, so to speak. Like there was the outer layer, and then on the inner layer, he used just to add artwork and make it look fancy and stuff. And at the same time he was working on this dome, he actually replaced the original designer and architect of the Palace of Versailles when it was being built. So kind of crazy to think he was working on this and Versailles at the same time. And he did amazing work on Versailles. Like, he's the guy that came up with the Hall of Mirrors and just really, really amazing stuff. I mean, Mansart was just incredible. And he worked very closely with the French painter Charles Le Bon to paint the Hall of Mirrors and all that. And when it came time to do the inside of the dome of Les Invalides, Charles Le Bon had been dead for a couple of years, so he actually used Le Bon's disciple, Charles de la Fosse, to paint the inside of the dome, and the results are just wow. I mean, look at this. I guess when he was working on Versailles with Charles Le Bon, he, I guess, remembered this disciple, Fosse, and brought him along a couple of years later to work on the inside of the dome. I think the paintings took until 1705 to complete, and the dome itself wasn't finished until 1708, which is actually the same year Mansart died. Though, to be fair to Mansart, the reason why the construction on the dome took so long was because France was in the middle of the War of the Spanish Succession, so money was kind of tight. In fact, construction had to be halted a few times because they simply didn't have the money to continue. But yeah, I mean, just looking around, just wow, Mansart was a master. Just simply a master of design, and just, geez. Well, I mean, go look at Versailles and what he did there. Actually, we are going to go and see Versailles eventually. But let's keep looking around here. Just, wow. This is so beautiful. Imagine what this would have looked like before the French Revolution. Let's take a look around. It's like they're having a get-together. Oh, and right about here is where Napoleon Bonaparte will be buried in about 70 years. After Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo, he was exiled to the South Atlantic island of St. Helena, where he died in 1821. And then in 1840, after a lot of diplomatic maneuvers and deals and everything, the French government cut a deal with the British to let them bring Napoleon's remains back to France to be buried in Les Invalides. It was actually a pretty big deal getting Napoleon's body back, and there was a just huge funeral and just really big pomp and circumstance. I mean, it really is interesting learning about this. And it took them about 21 years to build his tomb in Les Invalides. His tomb was designed by Louis Visconti, an Italian architect and designer. And that's a pretty amazing looking tomb. They basically had to cut the floor out and put his tomb down there, which is kind of interesting. And if you're wondering what they did with Napoleon's body while the tomb was being built for 21 years, they actually just put his casket in another part of Les Invalides for those 21 years. But it was definitely worth the wait. I mean, his sarcophagus is made out of red quartzite, and the base is green granite, and I think there's like a black marble base. And the bottom of it is really cool because it lists his major victories like Austerlitz and Marengo and the pyramids and all that. So it's really, really nice. I mean, this is probably going to be the first place I visit when I come to Paris, just to come and pay my respects to Napoleon. I mean, I'm a huge Napoleonic Wars buff. You know, this is probably my favorite time period and wars to study about. I mean, it just really is an amazing time period, and I'm just a really big Napoleon fanatic. So this will definitely be an amazing experience for me when I finally get to come and visit l'Empereur. And the cool thing too is Napoleon's not the only famous military commander buried in Les Invalides. He's also got his brother Joseph and Jerome. Joseph, I believe, was king of Spain, and I think that's, well, basically Napoleon took over Spain and put his brother on the throne, and I think that's how America got the Louisiana Purchase. We actually bought it from Napoleon, or his brother Joseph. And Jerome, the only thing I remember him for is failing to take Hougoumont at the Battle of Waterloo. And also buried at Les Invalides is Napoleon's son, Napoleon II, who died rather young, unfortunately. I believe he was only 21 when he died. Yeah, kind of sad. He was actually the son of the Archduchess of Austria, and I guess that would make him the grandson of the Emperor of Austria. So, yeah, kind of interesting. So, yeah, Napoleon II died of tuberculosis and pneumonia, so, yeah. Oddly enough, though, he was originally buried in Vienna, but when Adolf Hitler and the Nazis took over Paris, Adolf Hitler actually had Napoleon II's remains brought to Les Invalides. So for a time, he was buried, you know, right next to his father, so that's kind of interesting. But I think now Napoleon II is buried in a different part of the chapel, but yeah, didn't know that before doing any research on this. So that's the cool thing about doing this grand tour. I'm learning all this stuff before going to Paris. So this is definitely good for me. I hope you're enjoying it. But yeah, a lot of other military commanders like the Vicomte Turenne, one of the best generals of the 1600s, was buried here. Also buried at Les Invalides is Ferdinand Foch, the guy who led us to victory in World War I, and some other guys that I'm kind of surprised are buried there, like Robert, Nivelle, and Charles Mangin. Kind of surprised they got to be buried there after their disastrous attacks in World War I, but I mean, I guess Robert and Nivelle did kind of come up with the creeping barrage attack and stuff, but oof, chemin de dame, that's all I got to say. And Bessieres, he was a really good marshal in Napoleon's army. In fact, he was really good friends with Napoleon. If I recall correctly, he had a pretty interesting death. He was basically doing some scouting, riding around on a horse in 1813, and I guess it was a Russian or an Austrian cannonball hit a house and bounced off the house and hit him right in the chest, killing him. We're like, shit. That was a pretty good shot, guys. Jeez. But yeah, that was pretty tragic for Napoleon and Bessieres, of course. But Napoleon took care of him. I think Bessieres' son was actually named Napoleon, so yeah, that kind of shows how close they were. I mean, it really is going to be cool walking around Les Invalides, checking out all these tombs and stuff. But yeah, I mean, just looking around at this artwork, it's just, I mean, this is an amazing place. Hey, I wouldn't mind being buried here. Ooh, cake. What are those cupcakes? They're called pastries. We're in Paris. Okay. Wonder what the hell was in them. What the hell is that? Okay, we got some roadkill art. Dang, look at that. It's a very nice candlestick thing. Ooh, cake. With a egg on top. The hell's this? Huh. Doesn't have eyes. Wait a minute. Guy without eyes. Two guys there and a pyre. Holy shit, I think this is from the Trojan War. Okay, we got Hector, Achilles, Patroclus, and a pyre. Oh, wow. Okay. Was not expecting to see this scene from a... I mean, definitely wasn't expecting to see that in a church. Yeah, I guess what tipped me off was Hector was missing his eyes. That reminds me of that line from the movie Troy. Achilles told Hector, "You won't have eyes tonight, you won't have ears or a tongue. You will wander the underworld, blind, deaf, and dumb, and all the dead will know. This is Hector, the fool who thought he had killed Achilles." So, yeah, pretty cool, pretty cool. And I guess that was Achilles showing Patroclus, "Hey, I avenged your death." So, yeah, that's a cool painting. I guess Foch did that one. Yeah, and behind these doors, I think, go into what would be the tombs that will hold the remains of all those marshals and generals and stuff. So, yeah. So, yeah, I guess when they built Napoleon's tomb, they basically just cut out the floor here and dropped it down. Still kind of crazy that it took 21 years to do, but it's kind of easy for me to say. I didn't have to cut the freaking hole in this marble floor and stuff. The hell is that? Well, let's go take a look up here, shall we? Wow. Yeah, that's pretty freaking cool. Well, about 70 years, Napoleon. It's gonna be really cool being here. Yeah, I can't wait to come here. Okay, let's take a look outside. Alright, big crowd today. Hey, my chest is full. If only I was a woman. Excuse me. Alright, let's go check out the dome. This is actually the tallest church in Paris. Yeah, the dome is 107 meters or 351 feet tall. To put that in perspective, I think the spire at Notre Dame, what was it, like 91 meters? So exactly 300 feet tall. So yeah, this is pretty damn tall. Sure is beautiful though. You know, let's get the hell up there. Yeah, man. Get up there. Oh yeah, and they gilded the dome here in gold. Gold leaf, I should say. I think it's had to be re-gilded about 5 times during its history. Yeah, there's the Court of Honor. See, there's flagpoles. There's the military school. We'll check that out next. There's a Champ de Mars. The Eiffel Tower will be right there in about 90 years or so. And let's take a look around. Yeah, there's the Bastille. There's Notre Dame. There's the Pantheon. So yeah, pretty good view from up here. Now, one of the very, very, very cool things about Les Invalides nowadays is in 1905 they opened up a museum, an army museum in the complex, seeing how there weren't as many soldiers living there. You know, went from housing 4,000 to 6,000 men to just a couple of hundred. So it offered up a lot of new space in the complex, and so they turned it into the Army Museum, and it's actually supposed to be one of the nicest, largest military museums in the world. And seeing how, you know, the building itself is pretty historic and was always militaristic, it really is a unique museum, and I cannot wait to go and see it. I mean, they got artifacts from ancient times, medieval times, Napoleonic, modern. I mean, they really got some really awesome stuff. I mean, they have just tons of suits of armor, tons of weapons, cannon out the ass. I mean, I'm probably going to spend, I don't even know, I'm going to be here all day when I come to Les Invalides. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting when I come here. So, yeah, definitely an awesome first stop. But now let's go. What's going on over here? Assholes. Trying to give a tour here, you pricks. Alright, let's go check out the École Militaire. This is a pretty freaking cool building. This is actually where Napoleon went to school in 1784, and I believe he graduated in only a year instead of the usual 2. I think he was only 15. Yeah, and he was made a second lieutenant, I believe. If I recall, he did not have a pleasant time here because he came from Corsica, so he wasn't, you know, from France, and he had a different accent and just, you know, bullies and stuff. But hey, can't argue with the results. Now, the school was founded by Louis XV in 1750 after the War of the Austrian Succession. Basically got the idea from a German marshal named Maurice de Saxe. I think that's how you say his name. And with the support of Louis XV's mistress and a financier, they got the building going. Basically, the idea behind the school was to give children from kind of lower end noble families a chance to become military officers, which was kind of a interesting idea for the time, because before this, really, to be an officer you had to be a noble. And so given the opportunity to, I think they had about 500 young men sign up for each year, and these were, you know, kids from war-torn, poor noble families getting a chance to become something, you know. So that was pretty interesting. Now, if it hadn't been for the French Revolution, none of these kids would have been, you know, anything but, you know, I think Napoleon probably would have retired a captain and gone on to teach mathematics or something. it's kind of the French Revolution opened the door for men like Napoleon and his marshals. So the school didn't open until 1760, so it took a little while to build, but it's a very, very large complex. It was designed by, I guess you would say, Ange Jacques Gabriel, and it was basically meant to be a much larger complex than Les Invalides, and just, you know, it was supposed to be a pretty badass building, and yeah, man, it looks pretty cool. I gotta be careful getting around here because it's a school for young cadets, not a fully adult male with a hoodie. Yeah. But yeah, this is pretty cool, and the really, really cool thing about this building is that it will overlook the Eiffel Tower. So yeah. So yeah, the École Militaire is pretty freaking amazing. I mean, it has the distinction of training Napoleon Bonaparte, so and it's still open and operating even nowadays. So yeah, can't wait to walk around it. I don't think I'm gonna get to go inside it though. I think they, you know, it's a school, so probably just to get to check it out from far away. But it's pretty cool.
Citizen, hold a moment! Not in now! Ha! You're mine! Yeah. Je vous ferai porter un message par un de mes hommes de confiance. En effet, on voit presque plus rien. Il va nous coûter cher cette livraison. La taverne est encore loin. Situé à mi-chemin entre les Indes et les Amériques. Maintenant, pour en revenir à Troyes,
Yeah, this really is a pretty amazing complex. Yeah. Alright, let's get on to the Champ de Mars, shall we?